Greetings and salutations, viewers of YouTube. I'm your storytelling pal, Big Al, and I welcome you back to my channel. Please remember to like, got the hiccups, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good jazz. Couple of disclaimers before I start this. The stories that I tell on this channel are true-ish. One, they're true as best that I can remember them. Secondly, if I have to fudge a fact or two to make it a funnier story, I'm probably going to do so. I will leave out last names, to kind of protect privacy. Sometimes I'll change first names to protect privacy. Sometimes I will omit locations to kind of, also protect privacy. But you get the drift. Secondly, basically be nice in the comments or I'm going to delete them. I guess that's kind of the easiest way to say it. And I'm not saying that I'm above criticism, because if you have constructive criticism that can make my channel better, of course I'm going to be all ears. But if you're just going to be nasty or political or religious, this is not the space for that. And I'm just going to delete those comments because I'm just doing this for people to have fun and to get away from that kind of stuff and that kind of negativity. So, kind of like a gardener tending a garden, you kind of weed out what you don't want to grow there. And, I don't care if people hate this. I'm going to keep doing it until I get bored or until I get too busy with something else. So, there is that too. It's one of those things where I'm not going to read some negative comments and just, shut it down. So if that's what you're hoping for, tough luck. With all that said, let's get into today's story. And for once, this is not a story that I am able to tell you clearly from my own recollections. This is a story that had to be kind of pieced together by talking to several different people and also just looking at some of the physical evidence left over the next day. The reason why that is, this is the story of the most alcohol that I drank in one night. So in between my first and second stint of college, I was at a community college, and I was on the newspaper staff, the opinion page editor. And so every year we went to this college newspaper convention called the Kentucky Intercollegiate Press Association, or KIPA for short. The year before, we had gone to Lexington, and the speaker, I think for some people he might have been good, but for me and our editor-in-chief, Chris K. Funk Mattingly, the speaker left a little bit to be desired. I know that he lost me whenever he said that he drove out of Columbus, Ohio into the setting sun, and the next thing he knew, he was in Gainesville, Florida, at University of Florida. And all I kept thinking was, but that's not west of Columbus, Ohio. If you're driving into the setting sun out of Columbus, Ohio, there's a lot of schools you'll come to, all the way to the West Coast. But the University of Florida is not one of them. And so, basically, we were underwhelmed by the speaker the year before. And maybe that was just, personal, issues, but for whatever reason. And so I was because normally after the speaker's banquet, there is kind of a raucous night of drinking that goes on among the various collegiate collegiate journalism students from across the state of Kentucky. And so I'm if I got to listen to this speech, I'm at least going to get kind of a good buzz on. And so we're in Florence, Kentucky, just like south of Cincinnati. And, you know, I went to one of the girls in our room, Andrea, because she and I were going to walk down together because most everyone from our group was already downstairs and we were the last two getting ready. And so I'm watching TV while she's in the bedroom part of their suite, and I had a bottle of Mad Dog. And I'm like, I'll just open this up and take a few drinks and, you know, kind of get enough to get a buzz going before I go down there. And I've got this thing when I drink alcohol that I kind of, you know, like I can go like a year without a drink. But once I get that first drink in me, I tend to want a lot more drinks quickly. And I don't tend to have a lot of control of that, which is kind of why one of the reasons why I don't drink anymore. But Andrea said that like she came out to ask me about how long we had, and it was in like the start of like basically it had just come out of or was getting ready to start the like series of commercials, you know, for this TV show. And so, you know, I told her what time it was, and she said the bottle was full. And she said that by the time she came back again, the commercials were just ending, and the entire bottle was empty. And Andrea said she thought to herself, oh no. And I don't remember this. Like, this is where my memories kind of stopped for a while. And so we walked downstairs to the banquet, and we walk in, and I sat down between Mr. Strong, our like faculty advisor, and Wes Baggerly, our own line editor. And I don't know why I did this. Like, you know, this is kind of one of those, you know, the drunk version of yourself is kind of a pretty inexplicable thing. But throughout the, like, you know, the event, I kept patting Wes and Mr. Strong on the back. And whenever they'd ask me if I was okay, I would give them the double thumbs up. But I wouldn't say anything. Like, I just kind of had stopped talking altogether, which was kind of a common thing that would happen when I drank. And so, like, throughout the, like, speakers, or the speech, I basically was told that I kept staring at the ceiling, and people at other tables were taking bets on if I were going to fall out of my chair or not. And so, by the time it concluded, you know, it was kind of one of those things that Jacob and Wes were my roommates on the trip. Jacob decided it was best to hide the beer from me that I'd brought. And I brought like a case of Fall City beer. And so he hid it on our balcony. And it was like 20 degrees outside Fahrenheit. And so I found it pretty quickly. And I apparently, judging from the empties the following morning, I drained about 12 of them, you know, while I was in the room after the speaker's banquet. And Wes said he came in for a while and stayed kind of hanging out with me in the room just to kind of keep me occupied and keep anything bad from happening. And he said that I was just slamming beer after beer. And I just held the like down button on the remote control, so we were getting like a new channel every half second. He said it was kind of oddly hypnotic, was how he described it. And so there was about like an hour and a half where no one remembered seeing me, and I don't remember where I was in that time. And the next time anyone remembered seeing me, apparently I come out of the room, and the hotel that we were staying in was like circular. And someone had been basically one of the other like newspaper staffs had the door propped open where they were having their party room, and they saw me walk by repeatedly, and apparently I'd gotten lost and forgot which room was mine. And so I just walked lap after lap after lap looking for my like door. And since it was a circular hotel, it just the process kind of was not going to be like resolved without assistance. So they got someone like from our group and got me into my room. And then I don't know what happened in that next little bit, but about 30 minutes after that, Andrea said that her and Lenora, which was one of the other girls from our group, they were in the lobby. And, we were like up on the 12th floor. This is like a 26-story like hotel. And they saw me come out of the elevator, and I was dressed in like gym shorts and a t-shirt. And keep in mind, it's like 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. And so they asked me where I was going, and I pointed to this sign for this street fair that was supposed to be held in a couple of weeks. And Andrea and Lenora were both just like, "Oh no, Al, no, no, no." And so Lenora stayed kind of there, like holding my hand so that I didn't tip over. And Andrea ran and got the luggage cart. And so Andrea pushed the luggage cart behind me. And then Lenora just kind of gave me like a two-handed shove onto the luggage cart, and I fell. And then they just kind of tipped my arms and legs onto the cart. And they rolled me back upstairs and took me to my room. And then the like next thing that anyone remembers was that I was in the shower. And so everyone kind of thought, well, that's a good sign. Maybe he's just going to shower and then go to bed. And so the shower is where I remember my next memory after being in Andrea's room. Because I say that I woke up, it was probably more like I came to. Anyway, I regained consciousness. Let's just leave it at that. And apparently I had been in the shower at that point for 2 hours, and I was just curled in a fetal position in the floor of the shower. And the shower had been running all that time. And so my fingers and, everything was pruny looking, like when you've been in the water too long. And so I finally, I turned the shower water off, and I got out and I started drying off, and my head was just killing me. My immediate thought was, I've got to drink something to take the edge off this headache. And so Jacob, who I was actually the first person that Jacob had ever been around that got really drunk. He was a pretty sheltered, innocent guy. And so he had been coming in every so often to check on me in the shower. And with the shower water off and him, kind of wondering what had happened, he knocks on the door. And when he knocks on the door, I'm like, oh, someone, must need into the bathroom. And so even though I'm not wearing anything, I was drying my hair with the towel, but I didn't have on anything, below my head. I walk out into the room, and Jacob gets treated to, me fully in the buff. Poor guy. And so after I traumatize him, he is he leaves the room and just kind of leaves. And so I get dressed and I'm like, okay, I need to go find some more alcohol because my head really hurts now. And so I went to the elevator, and I got on the elevator, and I start riding the elevator. Just kind of whenever the elevator moves, I just go wherever it's going. And I keep hoping that I will run into some people from the Murray State newspaper staff, because I had been to Murray State, so I kind of, it's kind of one of those things. I knew if I made it to the Murray State room where they were having their party, that I would be okay. And so I'm riding the elevator for, probably 20 or 30 minutes. And this group of people get on. They look like they're college age. And I'm like, oh, are y'all here with the newspaper convention? And they all look at each other and they're like, yeah, we're here with the newspaper convention. And so I'm like, cool, can I come party with you? And again, they're kind of like, yeah, okay. And so I'm like kind of a little bit like, excited by this. And so I'm like, oh, I finally found some people with the newspaper convention. Party's back on, everything's good. And so, like, ride with them, and their, room was on the very top floor, which already should have been triggering some things in my head. And so they open the door, and we go in their room, and it's a lot nicer than the other rooms. And that, again, should have been triggering some things in my head. And so I look around, and I see some of the decor is like kind of wedding decor. And then I start to look at their shirts, which I had not really been paying attention to. And all the blue shirts, which worn by the men, like one of it said groom, and one of it said best man, and, like the girls were all in pink shirts, and one said bride, and one said, matron of honor, yada, yada, yada. And so it kind of dawns on me in my, kind of drunken mind that these are not college students that are with the, Kippa convention. And so I'm like, I'm really, really sorry. I thought y'all were with the newspaper convention. Is it okay if I just take a couple of beers and get out of here? And they're like, yeah. And so they point me to where there's some, like, a 6-pack of light beer on the counter. And in my drunken state, I was not able to pull the cans from the little rings. And so, realizing I could not do that, I began to weep. And so the bride came over and pulled the cans out of the rings for me. And, at that point, I left the room, and I get back on the elevator. So now I'm, double fisting light beer in the elevator for, another 45 minutes. And so finally, this girl gets on, and I recognized her from the previous year. And the reason I recognized her from the previous year is that Greg Busby, one of our previous newspaper staff members, Busby proposed to this girl after meeting her 45 seconds earlier. She started talking about how much she loved the Chicago Cubs, and Busby, after listening to that, he goes, "You're really cool. Will you marry me?" It's so, we all kept giving him crap about it the year earlier. And so I look at this girl and I'm like, "Marcy, you're the girl Busby proposed to." And she's like, "Yes, I am." And I'm like, "Marcy, take me to the Murray State party room." And she said, "I would love to." And so We get down, the Murray State party room was actually on the second floor. And so I walk in, and they've got their, like, all their drinks set up on the ironing board from the room. That was kind of the makeshift bar. And I grab a bottle of Malibu rum and a 2-liter Coke and a coffee cup from the hotel room. And I tell everyone, I'm Alcoholic Mason. I'm glad to meet you. And then I walk into the bathroom, and in that kind of space, you know how motel sinks have that, like, you know, where instead of having a cabinet under the sink, it's just like, you know, the counter cuts off and it's just open space. And so I crawl up under there with the rum and the Coke, and I pour myself, while I'm under there, like about 5 coffee cups that were about equal parts rum and Coca-Cola. And so finally, what kind of brought all this to an end was about 3 hours later. One of the guys from our group, Jamie Jordan, he came and found me. And I remember, like, I'm laying under the sink, and Jamie comes in the bathroom and kneels down on one knee. And I'm like, how did you know where to find me? And he says, Al, I knew there were people representing Murray State getting drunk in this hotel. I knew once I found them, you were not going to be far away. And so Jamie's older sister is a registered nurse, and she happened to be, like, also on our newspaper staff and also with us this trip. And so Jamie took me to Jody to be checked out and make sure that I wasn't, like, dying of alcohol poisoning. Which fortunately I didn't turn out to be. I probably did have alcohol poisoning, but I was not, like, fatally overdosing. And so, like, Jody checked me out, you know, checked my vitals and all that. And I slept, like, you know, on the floor of their room for the rest of the night, or what little rest of the night there was. And so that was the story of the most alcohol I've ever drank in one night. Hope y'all enjoyed that. Hope you're having a good one. I am out.